Hi, I'm really glad to be here at Voxxed Days. It's my first day here in Zurich, and it's my first day that I'm giving a talk in English. So bear with me. I'm quite nervous, and it might be that I'm struggling for words, but I hope you will get the intention in the end. What is BDD about? Here you find some pictures, some impressions about me, and the most important pictures are those from my bachelor graduation. It's not to say, yeah, look at me, I have a bachelor's degree. I also did the master's degree, but I did it from 2 years before, and I'm not a coder. And I'm telling you that because, as you already have might seen in this quick glimpse on IntelliJ, I'm not the most experienced coder. And later on, don't mention on the quality of my code, it's just to give you an example of what BDD is about. So now we can start with let's talk about software behavior, behavior-driven development, and I will give you a short introduce to the method, an example, and a live coding session. And before I start this, the most important thing I want to have you in mind after this talk is that I think behavior-driven development is not a testing method or framework, because very often I come into teams or talk to people and they are saying, oh yes, we use BDD for testing as well. And I think BDD is starting quite a time before we are going to test our software. And that's why I'm doing this talk, because I want to propose this message. When we are looking at software development, I think most of you will know this cartoon. It was the first thing I was told when I started university, and it refers to waterfall software development. It was, I thought, okay, never do this. But when I really started in agile teams, I realized, okay, we don't have these phases like we are having the requirements, having the code, having the testing phases. But what we do have is Jira tickets. And I think we often do the same way we did in waterfall, even if we have smaller or faster changes between the phases. But we write down something, we write down our requirements, and then we put the name of the next person on our Jira ticket, and we never talk about it. Or that's at least what lots of teams do, unfortunately. So when I started in one of my first projects, for the first 4 weeks, I wasn't really sure if there are any developers, because I never had any contact with this team. I was in a business analyst team, and we wrote these very complicated use cases and then gave it to the not really visible development team. It changed with time, but it was a hard way. And so even if it's Agile, Kanban, Scrum, whatever, I don't think it means we really talk about what we are going to do. And so I learned to know about BDD, and BDD in a nutshell tries to communicate a lot. And we are looking on the development part by describing what our software does, or what is the behavior of our software, and we are looking through the eyes of the user. So we always have this black box side on our software. We try to involve our stakeholders very, very early and really involve them, not give them a ticket, write them an email or whatever, but really get them on stage or on the table and talk to them. We then try to describe the behavior using concrete examples. I will show you in a minute. And these examples will later be the acceptance, or may become the acceptance criteria for the implementation. And then we come to the testing part. But because after implementation or during implementation, we want to be sure that our acceptance criteria are met, and then we can also use those examples we created for testing those acceptance criteria. And that's why some people are not saying BDD, behavior driven development, but ATDD for acceptance test driven development. So I might remember you in a minute what test driven development is, but now we are at behavior driven development again. And what we are doing, we have the most important persons we have in our team are the product owner or business analyst, who are the people who are, who own our product. As we know, they are looking for the right features, for the business implementation, for the success of the company that comes out of this product. So that's their eyes on the product. Then we have the coders who are thinking about a solution in a technical way. How could we implement this? What architecture should we use? Everything about that. And we have the testers who are trying to crash the system at the end. I'm a tester, and I really like to push any buttons in a web application that was not meant to push, and very often it's the moment where anybody says, oh, you were not supposed to do that. And I say, oh yeah, but I could. And obviously it wasn't, there's an exception that was never thought of in the beginning. So we take this 3 people at least and get them on a table. We are talking about a 3 Amigo workshop in this circumstances. We may have other people as well. Often it depends on the project. Often it's useful to have UI and UX people in this workshop as well. But you should be careful not to have too much people, because then it will be quite difficult to get good examples or to have a good communication. I think everyone knows that if there are too many people in a meeting, it gets kind of complicated. So when we are writing this this example, we are using a language that is called Gherkin. It's a very simple language. I will show you the keywords afterwards. We always start with describing our feature. That might be a user story. And we can describe it in as much detail as we want to. Sometimes it's very short, sometimes it's very long. It depends on your story. Normally, the PO will prepare the user story, bring it to the meeting, tell you about it, and then you start together on thinking about examples. And those examples are called scenarios in Gherkin. So the first thing is, get a title right for this scenario. Then we always have the keywords given when. Then given is some initial context. So where are we when we are doing this feature? When a specific event occurs, something happens anywhere, then we are expecting some specific outcomes. And in this way, we write as many scenarios or examples as we need to really understand what our software does. So in the end, we will have a documentation about the behavior of our software. And that's one of the great by effects of BDD, that we don't have to write a specific documentation beside our other work, but we do it by itself. So I told you before that we are now, when we have this specification in form of examples, we can start with doing TDD, test-driven development. I think most of you will know what test-driven development is, but just so that we are on the same page, I brought this. We always start with writing a test. This test will probably fail because we don't have any code written yet. Then we write as much code as is absolutely necessary to make the test pass. Afterwards, we may refactor the code and have the test as a control system. So we know as long as the test is green, we didn't broke our code. And now behavior-driven development meets test-driven development. That means before the test, we are writing this failing feature because we have the examples for the feature, but still no code, so nothing will work. And we can translate those examples to test cases. And now we are looking at the first example, at one of the examples. The keywords, some of them I already told you. It's feature, scenario, given, and then. That are the most important ones. You always, or you also can use and, but, and something like a background. I will show you in a minute. There are some more keywords, but I think those are the most important ones. So if you know these, you are ready to start with behavior-driven development. So our first scenario is a feature. It's a very simple one. And it's very simple scenarios because it's just to show you what BDD means. But it's actually from a real project. I changed some things so you won't recognize it. We had to build a web application where people can get an account and can get some work done in filling in specific fields. I don't know, sorry. So the first thing they wanted to do was creating a customer account. And here we have some user story. As a customer, I would like to give my data once in order to be able to use it again later. It's one of the most common use cases, I think. And we first describe the happy path. You don't see the happy path here because, the happy path in this project was really boring. But we also have to think about what happens if, and that's what I do as a tester, what happens if a person does not specify a name. So we have the first example given: a new customer account is created or should be created. When the name is empty, then the message, please enter your name, is displayed. That's something we wanted to have. You might say only a message is displayed or message is given or whatever. It depends on your project, how specific your messages should be. We were very specific. We wanted to tell the developers everything. So this was our first example. And the second example was the person does not provide the date of birth. So given a new customer account is created, because we are in the same background, when the date of birth is empty, we also show a message, but this time it's please enter your date of birth. And if you see, the given is, as I said, the same background every time. And in this case, we can get the background in the front, and then this background, this given step, how we name it, this step is part of any example that's following. So you can see you don't have to write things that are repeating again and again and again, but there are some things like the background. So before we come to the coding part, just a little thing about change requests, because that's something I was asked a lot, and I thought it was quite obviously. If we have additional scenarios, we write a new additional failing feature, we get additional tests out of it, then we have to add code, or sometimes only have to change code. It depends on the scenarios. And the really great thing is that our documentation is automatically updated with this scenario. If we really have change requests, that means really a feature that we already implemented should be changed, then we really have to rewrite this feature and rewrite our test out of it. So, and the rest is the same. Test should pass. So we have to change the code, and our documentation is again automatically updated. And I think that's really one of the great things about BDD. So now we come to the demo part, and I hope it will work. Just a minute. I don't have any. Okay. So I prepared a very, very easy and small project. Just a minute, sorry. So first, when we are starting with our project, there's nothing. We don't have any code. We don't have anything. The only thing we have is the run cucumber test class. That's what we need as to tell the IDE that we are working with Cucumber. Cucumber is a framework that translates kind of our gherkin scenarios to the code we are writing. In this example, I'm writing it in Java, but there are different languages you can use. So the first thing we will do, probably we already had our workshop and we created a feature text file, a feature file, where we, I think you will know it already, where we describe our feature and give a background, and then we have some scenarios here. And now we can take this feature and put it into our code. So you might, just transfer this file to the code, or you may create a new file. And I don't know how I named it. I think it's something like a customer account, and it should be a feature. So no, I don't want to add it. So it must be a feature file for Gherkin and for Cucumber to realize that this will be a Gherkin file. And now I just copy everything out of here and put it in here. And as you see, the IDE is helping me. It's already realizing, oh, that's a Gherkin file. It's the keywords are sorry, what is the word I'm looking for? The keywords are blue, if you realize. And also the IDE realizes that I have some steps, given when then steps that our IDE doesn't know how to handle. And I can now go on and create step definitions, and those step definitions are the clue code between the Gherkin files and the Java code. As you see, we don't have any Java code yet, but we have the Gherkin file. I might now create some step definition files, but I won't do this in this file, but quickly change to another one because we don't have too much time. So we are changing to the next implementation step where the step definitions should be already there. So if you see, we have been to the test files, and now we not only have the resources, the customer account feature. Okay, now I have it a second time because I brought it from my other implementation, but that's not a problem. We have this, here we have a feature file that is already part of implemented because I wanted to spare the time. So now we have a part of here in the Java, beside the run cucumber test class, we have those step definitions. And if we look into the step definitions, I hope you can read it. Then you see we always have this step. It's just the natural language that I used in my feature file, so I don't have to translate it into any code. It's already in a language everyone in the project is able to read. And afterwards, we tell our project what should you do with this when this step is shown, and then we have a method where we put in everything we already implemented. Now, I said we didn't code anything, but between 5 seconds before, and now I did some coding. So that's the reason why I do have some methods already. Normally, we'll start like I show you. If you just run the tests and where's my feature file? You see some of those steps are not implemented yet. And if I run my tests now, my IDE will realize this and give me some hints what I can do. So it tells me my steps are undefined, and it says you can implement this step by using the code snippets here. So I go right to the end because there every code snippet are given at once, and just copy this and put it into this step definition file. I put it on in the beginning. And now you see that would be the, what did I do? Why are you not, why is the given? Okay, I don't know. Don't know why the given is red. Didn't I implement it? Ah, okay. So now it knows. So that's the way you start. You have a given step or when step or whatever step, and you have no code. So you should actually throw a pending exception or a runtime exception or whatever, but please throw an exception, because otherwise, if you have an empty method here, the test will be green and it will be very, very difficult to later check out what tests are not implemented yet. So this would be the start, and then I would start by, okay, what does that mean? A new personal account is created. What do I need for that? Probably I will need a class that might be a person, and then you would start coding. And yeah, I already did that. I implemented a very, very easy person class. It has some strings and birthday, local date, etc., and some very, very easy methods. And we have a validator class that does some validation for getting messages if something is wrong. So you don't have to look at this code, as I already told you, but we now have an implementation in the back. So we could say what happens if a new personal, or when a personal account is created. The first thing we have this context we are talking about, and we are talking about a personal account, so we should have a person. So that's why we are having a new person. And then we look at the next step when the name is empty. So now we know we should implement something about giving an empty name or giving a name into to our person. We already implemented the code in the person class, so now we can use it. And in this example, we are setting the name. Oops. Setting the name to an empty string. And the same here, we are having a birth date, so we should implement a setter for the birth date, and then we can use it here and say set birthday to an empty string. Everything else in this step definitions is already implemented because of the time we have at this conference. So now when I run the tests again, I hope they should be green. Yeah, actually they are. So you see down here, we are creating a customer's account and we have different scenarios. I zoom a little in. So as you see, we always have this natural language, so we can read it very easily. I know most of you are developers and you might be able to read code as easy as natural language. For me, it is not as easy, so I really like reading it in natural language. Just a second. So that's the basics you have to know about BDD, but we will have a look at the next implementation step as well. But let me have a look at my notes, because probably I forgot something very, very, very important. I hope not. Okay, so if we are going a step further and do some more implementations and some more tests, then we what did I do? First I will roll back my changes. Okay, so here we go. So now you see we don't have any more classes because we already always only have this person and validator, but we do have some more tests. If we are looking into our resources, I now have some directories, and I do have some manual tests and some tests for automation. So as you see, it's possible to only tell the IDE to only run part of the tests. You can do that quite easily by giving or by defining the directory where the tests are written, or by adding some tags, as you might see here in, I think here might be a tag. This is a validation tag, so I can say only run the tests with the tag validation or run the tests without the tag validation. Everything is possible. And as you might see here, I didn't mention that. I told you the English keywords for Gherkin, but there are lots of languages. And I didn't find anything for Schweizerdeutsch. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it right. So I switched to pirate English. I would never use it in a real project because I don't think it's very easy to understand what it means. But you see there are keywords in pirate as well. And Cucumber doesn't care about those keywords. As long as you tell them it's English, the default is English, so you don't have to tell the IDE that you're using English. But as soon as you're using German or Spanish or whatever, I think it's over 70 languages available, then you have to tell it. And you don't have to implement the step definition in different languages. So those keywords are always the same keywords, regardless if they are in pirate, in German, or in English. And that brings me to one thing you should have in mind, because Cucumber doesn't really differentiate between the when, then, given steps. It's for you to understand what you are trying to in which in which surrounding you are. So given should be your context, and when will the event occur, and then is what will occur afterwards. But you can easily switch it or have the same step as a when step and as a then step, and Cucumber won't care. So you should be careful about it, because obviously it's not the same if you are using something as a when or a then step, because I didn't show it to you until now, but in the then step, we will have our assertions. So if we are using something like a new customer number for the person is created as when a new customer number for the person is created, we probably will expect something else than when we are saying then a new customer number for the person is created. So be careful and check for it. Or some people, in some other frameworks, the given and when and then is pulled into the method. So you really have different methods. But here you have to fix it yourself. So back to being a pirate. Another thing you see here, besides the pirate language, is that you can also we had these messages that are always messages, just a little different messages. And if you have something like that, you can have, in English, it's in scenario outline. So you give them some parameters or variables and say every step is the same. If here, when the birth date with a special value is entered, then the message is shown. And then you have this table beneath it and give the different birth dates and the different messages, so you don't have to write everything again. But as soon as Cucumber runs this test, every example is a known scenario. So if we are running the tests now, and hopefully it will work, you will see not everything's working, but if you may see, there is an example number 1, when a new personal account is created and the birth date Sylvester 1849 is entered, then this message is shown, then the next one. So you always will get the scenarios with written, given, when, then steps, what is also easier for the people. You might give a report. I'll show you that in a second. Give a report about your tests, then they don't have to bear in mind, okay, in the beginning were the steps and now we have the examples, but they see the whole example with every step again and again and again. So why did our order newsletter not pass? Okay, that's one of those steps I didn't implement yet. So here you see we will get an pending exceptions. It tells me to implement me. That's quite useful when I'm the one implementing the tests. When I'm going to give the tests to my product owner or whoever, and I don't want them to see that we didn't have implemented everything up to now, then I just can go into the Cucumber test class. If I'm doing it with Maven, or now I just have to go to the Cucumber properties, where I do have those properties, and here I can filter out those tags. This is the order newsletter feature that's not implemented yet. So I would tag it. I just show you. I tagged it with at newsletter, and then I can tell Cucumber to leave out all tags that are newsletter, so don't run the tests. And if I do it again, now we won't see those order newsletter tests any longer, and all the tests that are implemented are green, so I could give a report to my PO. Just let me have a look at my notes, because I think most of this I told you already. Yeah. I said a few times now I give a report to someone, and normally POs or business analysts doesn't really like to work in the IDEs. So I would just build it, and I have some plugins installed where I do some magic Qt Doctor and ASCII Doc and whatever things. So I hope everything will pass also with the Maven. Yeah, okay, it does. So after building this, I will have some different reports. I'll show you this one as first. So I think this is one thing my product owner would like, because it's colored, and colored is always really good. Second. So we have a very simple overview. You can jump into the features and see the different steps and backgrounds. You can look at the text that were given or at the steps that were implemented. Probably the product owner wouldn't be too interested in this one. And you can see the failures. We didn't have any, so we don't have any failures here. And something I really, really like, I don't know how many of you are familiar with ASCII-Doc. I have to find it because I told you about the living documentation, about the documentation that is automatically there as soon as we are doing gherkin and cucumber, and but it's a little difficult to read all those feature files. It's a lot nicer if we do have a documentation, for example, as in PDF. So I do have this ASCII-Doc. If you don't know it, you might ask me. I'm here until this afternoon, but just for now, okay. Obviously, something doesn't work. Normally, it's very easy to get an PDF out of it. Now we're doing it's on an HTML. So you see, this is kind of a static website that's created, and here you will find everything, every feature that we just tested in our last build. So I think there are lot more things you can do with behavior-driven development, but I think we are running out of time. I'm not quite sure. It's 5 minutes. I'm sure. Okay. So sorry, I didn't realize that. So let me have a quick look if there's something on my presentation after this demo. Yeah, some things I wanted to tell you again, or I don't know if I really told it in this detail, because one very important thing for me is that the ubiquitous language, the domain language, evolves automatically while you are doing these workshops in the beginning, because you are talking about your features, and you will always use the same words for the same things. And that's in common projects, it's often that product owner speaks another language than the developers, another language than the testers, and here you will have this this domain language in the end. I already told you about the natural language. I can read it very easily, and I can talk about it very easily. We get a common understanding. We are really talking about what we are doing, and I didn't show you the part of the manual test, but it's really, you don't have to automate every test. Sometimes there might be reasons why you don't want to automate it, but BDD is, as I said, not about test automation. It's about communication, because it's not behavior-driven testing, it's behavior-driven development. And you really should bear this in mind. It's about collaboration and communication. That is the reason why sometimes I write a test and I check it into the code, because in the code base, because then I have it on a Git repository. But I never want to automate this test. It's just for me for different reasons. But if you want to, you can use those examples as tests, and then you have as a byproduct your test automation and the living documentation, and you don't have to do really more than do behavior-driven development. And with this, I'm at the end. Thank you for joining. Sorry for struggling sometimes. I hope you did understand what I wanted to tell you. If you have any questions, I'm here until this afternoon. You might meet me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Mastodon. You might write me an email. I think you will get the presentations as well. And I don't think we have much time. I'm not sure for a question. We do have? Okay. So if some very easy to answer questions have arisen, that's your chance. Yeah, over there. Yeah.
Is it enough if I talk loud?
Yeah, I think so.
So let's just imagine you create start to talk about the requirement, we open up the ID and start to write these scenarios right in the IntelliJ or Eclipse, or you first do it somewhere, I don't know, Confluence, and start there.
Yeah. Okay. The question was, when we are doing those Three Amigos workshop, if we are writing the scenarios right into the IDE, or if we are doing it in Confluence or wherever, right? That was the good. Okay. So it's a consultant answer. It depends. If everyone is very familiar with the IDE, you might start writing it right into the IDE. But as you have seen before, I had this text file, so you can just open any editor and write it in text file, or you also could write it in Confluence. I think wherever people are confident and familiar with is the right tool, because either way you just have to copy and paste it afterwards into the IDE. That doesn't have to be at the workshop.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who is having the ownership to write the test? Because at the end, we are ending up that developers are writing the scenarios and writing the test and writing the code and everything.
Okay, I don't know if I got it right. You asked me who has the ownership about the testing?
Product owners are writing these scenarios, business analysts, or who is having the ownership?
The team, I would say, because that's the idea. It's not the product owner will bring the user story. That's their job. But the scenarios, those examples, they are written by the PO and the coder and the tester, so the ownership is theirs. The test will be, the example will become the test, and then it's up to the developer to implement the code right. And afterwards, as the tester or the product owner might see the green tests, and if our examples have been right, then we can be sure that it is implemented right. So the ownership is always a distributed ownership in the team, in my opinion. There might be some product owners or testers or developers who want to have the ownership or doesn't want to. I don't know. Yeah, I think this.
Did you encounter any resistance from product owner or business analyst or whatever in adopting this kind of way of defining the behavior? Because some contexts I've been working in, they maybe have already their way of defining behavior, Word document, every kind of documentation that gets completely useless the day after you start coding, but in any case, they are used to work in that way. Find any resistance in adopting this?
Yeah. Okay, the question is if I found any resistance in working this way. For example, if product owners or have their common ways writing their user stories, right? Okay, so yeah, I think there's always, not always, but it's common for people to say no, we did it another way all the time and it worked. And yeah, I'm now in a team that does example mapping a lot. So that's a step before we are doing those scenarios, and we do it in a refinement with everybody, and it works really well. And the product owner is, yeah, they support it. But I always also have been in teams where they didn't have the time for those workshops, not realizing that the time is always the same, or it will be more time because afterwards you have to ask again and again and again, what does this mean? What does that mean? In Confluence, there's something I don't understand. Yeah, it's probably a good idea to start with a small part of your product and say, just let's try it. And sometimes it works. And if it doesn't, I don't know. I'm not a magician, so I...
Start small and do a good marketing.
Yeah.
Selling the benefits.
Genau, selling the benefits. That's what I'm doing here. So thank you for coming. If you have any further questions, find me anywhere on the venue. Thanks.